How you doing? I'm Nikki, and today we're going to be doing a lip drawing tutorial, specifically how to draw or how I draw semi-realistic glossy lips. So this is kind of stemming from this new way of drawing lips that I've discovered. I saw this one piece on I think it was Instagram, and I really loved it, and I was like, oh, I want to do that. And ever since I did the first one, I was like in love, and like I've been doing it ever since. So I thought for future times in all posterity, I would maybe put this tutorial out there. Maybe it could help someone, and just for me as well. I want to remember how I did this. So that's what we're gonna do today. So first thing we'll start with is let me get rid of these lips first. There we go. Now the first thing I'm gonna start with is our sketch. So I'm gonna do pretty much the same lips I had previously there. Okay, so I'm just gonna draw the sketch of her mouth really quick. And since this tutorial is not about how to draw lips, it's about how to paint the lips. So I'm just gonna sketch it out really quick, come up with a sketch that I like, and we will paint it. Okay, so I have my sketch all done. The next thing I do is to block in the colors. So what steps you go with next might vary depending on how you utilize your lines in your final art piece. I know people like Loish like to utilize her lines in her coloring phase, and she flattens them together. So if that's something you do, go ahead and do that now. I'm just gonna choose some base colors. So based on the look of the colors that I have already, I'm gonna do something a little bit closer to between her skin and hair color. So kind of like what I had before. Let's see if I can get it without looking at it. So what I like to do is do a darker upper lip and a lighter lower lip. This doesn't always pan out depending on the lighting you have. This is just pretty generic lighting, you know, top right corner. I'm just making sure I am not mirror image. Yeah, so at this point, you decide your lighting, and if your upper lip is away from the light, make it darker. So I tend to exaggerate this and make it a lot darker than it might be if the lips are the same color. I just like it that way. So go with whatever colors you want. The colors you choose here are not important to making the lips look glossy and semi-realistic. You can honestly go with like whatever crazy colors you're thinking of. So I am going to use my pen tool to fill in this color. Let's see if I like it. Oh, am I on the right layer? I'm on the wrong layer. There we go. I like that color. Now at this point you can color all the way to the edge here if you want, but for the method of painting that I'm about to show you, we're actually gonna cut that part back out. So you can choose to not paint in all the way to the edge at this point if you want. You'll see once we get to the end as we go through this what I mean. But all right, so now we have our base colors. At this point we're gonna lock the layer. So because I do this, I tend to do the facial features, the eyes, the eyebrows, and the mouth on a separate layer to the skin. I do the skin by itself, and then I do these features separately for this reason, where I can lock the layer and paint inside this section without going out on the skin, and I can get nice crisp edges. So I locked the layer's transparency, or in paint tool side it's called preserve opacity, I think. At least that's what it's called in mine. Then I'm going to use the airbrush tool, and we're going to take the upper lip color, make the color a little cooler, so towards the blues, and darken it. And then we're just gonna paint in the crease. So just a quick shadow. Doing that, I can see somewhere I missed painting there. I'm gonna have to fix that. So not too much. You don't want to lose like the line delineation between the lips. I think I might have done a little too much there. So let me back off a little bit. Okay. And now at this point, the brush that I use is a blur brush. It's really a watercolor brush, but it acts like blurring the colors. You can find a comparative brush in Photoshop, I think. I think it's the smudge brush kind of does it, and there's also now like a mixer brush. I don't use Photoshop all the time. I do know those brushes though, so you can probably use those, and I know there are blur brushes in other programs. There is a blur brush in Photoshop as well, but I don't really like how that one functions to do this job. But you can try that. One quick note though, I do want to do a quick note on using the blur brush or blurring in any form. So if you have two colors, so let me just make two colors really quick here, and you're gonna blur them together. These are kind of like strange colors to want to blur together, but let's say you wanted to blend them and you're using a blur brush. Now, things you should consider is the hardness of the blur. I know that might sound counterintuitive to what do you mean hardness? It's a soft edge. Yes, but how much you blur it or how much you maintain the visibility of that delineation between the two colors can have a great effect on how airbrushed or over airbrushed your piece can look. So this is something I take into consideration a lot when I'm drawing or painting, because I do like a more clean airbrushed look, but I don't want it to look over airbrushed and like not rendered. So in order to maintain the integrity of my lines, you have to kind of watch out how much you blend. So look, when I do it this much, I can still tell the difference between the two colors, and I can kind of, get the edges on each of them a little bit more, and I can still see the line almost between the two colors. If I make the brush a little bigger, I can get rid of that line even more, and there's even less of a delineation between the colors, and now it's blended even more. So this is the watercolor brush in Paint Tools. I mentioned that already. So this is what I use to do this. Now, between using these colors was probably a bad example. Let me use colors that you would most likely do this with. For example, skin colors. Something like that, and I want to do a shadow. And let's say it's like the cheekbone or something. You can do like wrong brush. You can do a sharper, more controlled blend between the edges, so that it's not as gone. The edge is still kind of there. You can see it. Or if you want it to be a smoother transition, make the brush bigger and get that edge completely blended out. So you do have to keep in mind how you use your blur brush to maintain edges when it's necessary. For example, on the edges of the nostrils, you don't want to blur that out completely. You want to keep some delineation visible. But for like on the cheekbones, you don't really want that line too visible. You want to blend it more. You might make your brush bigger. Okay, so that's an aside. Let's get back to blending our lips. Now we're gonna blend the airbrush that we just put down into the bottom and top lip, but we're gonna be careful to not over blend so that we lose the line between the two layers. Between the upper and lower lip. Okay, so I'm just gonna make my brush a little smaller and get this blended up into the upper lip, and do the same with the lower lip. And my layer is still preserving opacity, so notice if I go over the edges, I won't lose my sharp edge. We will do something with that in a second, but for now, we don't want to lose that sharp edge. Okay, so we've gotten a nice first blend. So you might be thinking the shadow's not dark enough. So depending on your piece, if you're working with really dark values, then you definitely want to match the values of your shadows in the lips with everything else. If you look at my piece, they're not very dark. I kept it pretty light. The darkest is like this shadow between her hair and her face. So I'm not going to go too dark with the line between the upper and lower lip, but I think I will darken it just a tad. And to do this, I'm just gonna take a regular, let me turn off. I'm just gonna take a regular soft-edged brush, and it's got a little transparency to it, so it's not fully solid. And I'm just gonna use make a thin line between the two lips. So just like that, trying to be careful not to be too messy. So I've regained the difference you can see between the two lips a little bit better now. Now I'm going to try darkening the shadows just a little bit. I'm going to use a little darker than what I just used to make that line. And then with the opacity still locked, just run over a little bit with the airbrush. And I'm not going to do too much again. So again, we'll go back to your blending brush and smooth out the edges a little bit. All right, so that looks pretty good. That's like our base coloring done. The lips look pretty soft and nice, but they're kind of boring. So we want to add some interest to it. So I'm just gonna get rid of my lines now. I don't need them anymore. I just realized I painted on top of my lines. Usually I paint under my lines. And then I'll hide my lines, but I didn't do that this time, but that's okay. All right, so the next thing we're gonna do is fix the edges of the lips. So I'm just gonna do some cleanup and use my soft edge brush to just clean up some of the edges. And then I'm going to, using my blur or blending brush, really small. So this is about that edge control with your blur brush. I'm just gonna soften the edge of my lip just a little bit. Just the top lip. The bottom lip we're gonna do differently, and we'll come back to that, but just the top edge. And we're gonna add other highlights to it later, but this is a first step to deal with that. And then for the corners of the lip, I'm gonna take my darkest color, and I like to make a little indent in that corner. Not everybody's lips has this, but I like to do this. So I'm just gonna do that and then use my blending brush to blend out some of it. And this helps to make it fit into the face more. So I'm gonna add a little bit more with my soft brush, kind of lightly, and blend that some more. And if you overdo it, you can just use your soft edge brush and erase away some. And just continue with that on both sides until you get something you're happy with. This is just to show like a bit of a dimple in the corners of the mouth. Like I said, not all mouths have this, but I find it a very cute feature, so I like to include it. I don't always put it in, but especially when I have a really cute character, I do put it in. All right, and then before we do the next step at the corner of the mouth, we'll come back to that. We're gonna do the bottom lip. So we're gonna take a chunk out of the corner, and you'll see why in a second. Depending on what program you're working in, you might not have to do this, but in Paint Tool Sai, because of the way the watercolor brush spreads the pigment, I like to take out the corners here. And this is important to do with transparency off. Then I'm going to take my brush and make it a decent size, and I'm going to blend out the edge until it fits the outline that I had before. I keep hitting that on my keyboard, I'm sorry. Not my keyboard, my tablet. And just make it a little smaller when I come into the edge there, and do the same on the other side. Notice I'm kind of keeping the bottom edge. I want the bottom edge to be a little sharper. So you can see we're getting that effect that we want. Nice, soft bottom lip. All right. I'm gonna correct the edge of this. I feel like it's a little off. And sometimes you might have taken out too big of a chunk, so you can like put some pigment back in and fix it. Like maybe you don't want it to be that much. Like I feel like I want it to be a little bit thicker here. Very cool. Nice. So we're coming along very nicely. So now the next thing we're going to do is this edge, this corner of the lip. Now there is a thing, I'm going to take the color from my skin. If you don't already have a skin color, if you're just doing the lips by themselves, you probably don't have to do this step. But if you have a skin color, take the lightest highlight, maybe usually from the nose or from the chin, depending on where your lightest highlight is, and put it right at the corner. Not all the way into the edge here, but right at a little bit down towards the edge of the lip here. And blend out one side of it, leave one side sharp. Blend out the outer side. And this does a thing to kind of make the lips look a little shinier. And I don't always add to both sides, but I think I might this time. It doesn't always work on both sides. It might need to be a little lighter, so I'm gonna test that out. And that same color we're gonna use for the highlight of the lips. So that same brush with slight opacity to it and or I should say lower opacity to it and a soft edge, we're gonna use that to highlight the rest of the lips. So I'm gonna add, depending on the direction of your light source, add a highlight to the top edge of the lip, nice and soft. And if the edge is not disappearing softly, you can use your mixer brush or blur brush to kind of blend it in nicely. And I'm gonna do it to the other side as well. This usually happens when you're wearing lip gloss. Sometimes it's not like as sharp as this, and it might actually be like something like that, more blended. So you can do that too. For this, I think I'm gonna keep it sharp. Next, I'm gonna add a highlight to the bottom edge of this lip. And I'm gonna blend out the corner or the sides. And then finally, we're gonna add the highlights to the lips themselves. So to do this, because it is a semi-realistic style, we're not gonna go crazy with the lines on the lips. Especially if you want soft, smooth looking lips, you don't wanna go crazy with the lines. The lines kind of make them feel a little grittier. So I tend to do like big dollops of highlights on the top lip, like that. I think this highlight might be a little too yellow though, so I'm gonna change it to be a little more pink. That's better. And just try to make them a little random. And for the bottom lip, I like to make the lines thinner. And you can make them random too. And we're almost done. The last thing I like to do is make the brush a little bigger, and you can turn down the opacity for this as well, or you can just draw lightly and make one swoosh across those highlights. And that just makes the lips look super shiny. I'm just gonna add a few more highlights to the top lip here. And the last thing to do to make these lips fit in the face a little better is to add a shadow under the bottom lip. So I'm just gonna grab a shadow from the skin and then I'll make it a little darker and right at the edge of that highlight. So you have a couple choices here. If you want, you can make a space between the shadow and say that that's the edge of the lip that isn't painted with lipstick. I do that sometimes, but I do prefer just putting this right up to the edge. So I'm just gonna add the shadow here. And then use my blur or blending brush and blend in just the sides and the bottom. And now the lips fit the face. You might want to also add like an umlaut. I don't always do that because I feel like it kind of is, if it's overemphasized, it can be a little bit not pleasant to look at. So maybe take a light shadow and blend it out a lot. I'm just gonna, it looks like a mustache. Just a light shadow there. And I'm gonna blend it out a lot. And then you can also add a highlight on the other side, the side closer to the light source. Yeah, and that's pretty much it. We have made our semi-realistic, shiny, glossy lips. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Please let me know if you found it useful. If there was anything that I didn't explain well, please leave a comment down below and let me know. Maybe I will do another one in the future and explain things a little bit better. Anyways, let me know if this was helpful. Let me know if you enjoyed this video. Please leave a like and subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.